Well, good afternoon to you. 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us here on the program at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, some details on Joe Biden's day back in Washington. They say he met with presidential historians for lunch. Yeah, I'm sure that was great. We'll give you a little preview of what that means and what's going to come out of his mouth in the days ahead. And also, Republican congressmen visit the border. Got some audio from that coming up. They say that Eagle Pass, Texas, is where they went. That the Biden administration tried to move as many of the illegals away from the site today as they possibly could to avoid the images of foreign nationals pouring across the border. They didn't want Republicans to have any success in highlighting the crisis. Oh, so it is possible to get control of the border when you want to. Oh, what a scam. All right. But first, let's talk about something else the left is doing that's nutty, which is advancing this notion that children are born in the wrong bodies and that they should be subjected to a life of torture as a result of that. Mary Rooke is a commentary and analysis writer for the Daily Caller, and she's writing about that this week. Mary, great to talk to you as always. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Vince. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so you have a piece up today in the Daily Caller, and the headline on this is "The Left's Transgender Hysteria is Harming People in Ways We Never Could Have Imagined." Now, if you were to ask me, how would this hurt people? I think there's some obvious manifestations of it. Definitely the physical stuff. If you're chopping off the genitals of children or even adults for that matter, that's irreparable, and that's damaging. What's going on here? How far-reaching is this damage?
Yeah, you're right. So as I was doing some research for this piece, I was kind of looking into it, and I guess I kind of expected to look at it and see, the usual stuff. People complain about having botched genital surgeries where they can't urinate correctly or they can never come to a full orgasm or, even more serious issues and complications. But that's not what the kind of underlying issue is. Whenever you have a patient going into the hospital and they're identifying as a man and they're a woman, there's going to be issues with that because men are naturally bigger. It doesn't matter how much testosterone you take and how bigger you look on the outside because you're growing your muscles. Your internal organs and your anatomy just really don't change in that way. And so one of the craziest things that I found was this woman who they called Sam in the study. So I don't know what her birth name was, but she goes by Sam, and she went into a Michigan hospital. The Michigan intake nurse took her at her word. She says, "I'm a man." Okay. And she starts processing her as a male patient. But the issue with that is that she was pregnant. So she comes in with abdominal pain and complaining of high blood pressure. Now, I've been pregnant 4 times. I know exactly what abdominal pain and high blood pressure means. It means it's almost time for me to give birth. So she goes in and she's kind of confused as what's happening. It takes hours for them to figure out that, oh man, we should probably do a physical exam on this woman because her HCG levels were kind of skyrocketing. And when they finally found out that she was pregnant, the baby had already died in utero. And so on top of being shocked that she's pregnant because she's been living as a man for years now, and, thinking that she's going to go in and get, just some regular blood pressure medication or some, stomach issue sorted, she's pregnant. She then has to deliver by emergency C-section a dead baby, which is so traumatic. So we're talking about someone who has mental illness because they think they're in the wrong body. And then you tell them not only are you in the correct body, but your body is doing exactly what it was built to do.
Yes.
And then the baby that you've been growing inside you, so the hormones and everything that you've been feeling for these past several months are now because you are carrying life and this life is dead.
Well, the thing that's jumping out at me, though, is that the hospital apparently played along with it for long enough that it became a complete disaster. And am I wrong in thinking that medical professionals are under an immense amount of pressure now to abide by this fantasy rather than to prioritize health?
Oh, absolutely. I have family members who are in the medical field, and I think their biggest complaints are having to deal with the, insanity that comes with either abortion or gender ideology or, racial ideology. all of these things come to play in some of our most important institutions, and people are getting seriously hurt by it. I mean, this woman is now in a depressive episode, and, you know, she wanted a copper IUD because she wanted to make sure she could never get pregnant again. So she's having this realization that she's a woman. She will always be a woman. No matter what, she will be a woman.
Yeah.
Because even living as a man for years, she was still able to get pregnant. And that's actually a lucky case, because most of these detransitioners that we hear about online, their biggest fear or their biggest anxiety or sadness is the loss of their infertility, especially for women, the loss of their infertility, the loss of being able to breastfeed their children whenever they do come back around to the side of light. Like, these things are serious issues, and doctors that play along with it and doctors that don't speak the truth are harming their patients. And there used to be an understanding that doctors did no harm. We found out during COVID that was not really the case anymore. Doctors were really ready to do as much harm as they possibly wanted to do, as long as you didn't abide by their ideology with COVID. And now we're seeing it with gender as well, except for instead of forcing you to get the jab, or, you know, refusing to treat your cold because you're not vaccinated, now they're just ignoring basic biology. When you have a woman coming in with abdominal pain,
Yes.
and an intake nurse is willing to treat her like a man, you're killing life. And I know the left doesn't see unborn children as true life, but it is. And you know it is, because she mourned it. She mourned the baby without even knowing she was pregnant for long enough to become attached.
The other piece is that it's not just individual doctors, it's the major medical organizations who are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
The American Medical Association, in the UK, their medical organizations, they're the NHS. They're making claims that fly in the face of their prior understandings. For instance, that it used to be that we would all acknowledge that so-called gender dysphoria is a mental illness. It is a mental disorder. Now the pressure is on to say, actually, no, it's not. And certainly in the UK, they straight up say it's not a mental illness. This is not a mental disorder. This is how far medical fields have gone. They've abandoned biology itself.
Yeah, and, you know, we're seeing it here in the U.S. too. I mean, our major medical organizations have completely turned their back on reality and have pushed this gender ideology to the point where, you know, I uncovered that OU Health was performing surgeries on young children. They had to admit to us that they were going to stop doing that because the pushback became so strong. But it's not just them. I mean, we just promoted a man impersonating a woman as a lieutenant colonel of the Space Force. And then he goes on and says, not only do we need these people in the military because we're no longer going to be fighting wars like we used to, we're going to be fighting them with our quote unquote brains, but he's encouraging major corporations to be doing the same thing. So instead of getting these people the help they need, we are quote unquote affirming their mental illness, telling them that it's normal, and then giving them actual positions of power.
So the effect of all of this, of course, is dehumanizing. It's to remove what makes us special as humans. And what is the big impact societally of this? Because the message here, I mean, you and I are having a rational conversation about this, but I think especially children are being led down a very disordered path by this ideology. And I don't know that we even fully grasp the long-term implications here. What are they?
No, I think that what we're doing is we're taking about 30 steps backwards from what feminism thought it was doing. Instead of being able to promote the divine equality between men and women, I mean, God created us in order to be a perfect balance of one another. So instead of agreeing with that balance and promoting that balance, we're telling all of women that they should be men. And then on top of that, we're telling little girls, guess what? If you feel worried in your prepubescent body, don't worry about it, because we've got a fix for that. It's called chop and stab. You know, we're going to stab you with testosterone and we're going to chop all your vital organs off. It's just insane to me that people don't see that we're going to be having a generation of children who are dealing with trauma and dealing with depression and anxiety on levels that I don't know if we'll be able to come back from. That's what I'm scared about. I mean, I have 4 daughters, and I look at them every day and I think, man, when I was a teenager, it would have been so easy for me to have fallen down that path. There was definitely, weird, ugly duckling stage and that kind of awkwardness in your growing self. And if someone had come along and been like, you know what, there is this option for you to not have to feel this way. We can affirm you in a different way. I might have taken it. And I'm worried that, I obviously watch my children and I make sure that they understand their worth, but some parents are just so confused and blinded by all these narratives that they have no idea the deeper implications of it. Their children are going to be captured, and then we're going to have an entire generation of traumatized, hurt, and essentially infertile children.
Well, we definitely have conditioned ourselves to think that there is an easy way out of all of our challenges, haven't we? I mean, everything is just like you can turn to your phone for instant distraction, whatever you need, anything can be delivered. It's like this life of ease. So you do become conditioned to thinking like anytime you encounter a challenge, you can smash a button and solve it. And this feels like an extension of that.
Oh, for sure. And I joked the other day, there's this great meme going on around online that's like, I might have been born in the wrong generation or the wrong decade or the wrong period of time in life. And I think, no, I haven't. I actually love electricity. I love the heat in my home during the wintertime. I love living during this age of technology.
Yeah.
But as a parent, it terrifies me because it's instant gratification. That's what we've given our world, is instant gratification. And God calls us to suffer. God calls us to suffer because it creates holiness. It creates good people who have empathy and understand, what kind of goes on in life. And without adversity, without suffering, how are we supposed to gain that? And the answer is you can't. You have to have it.
Well, sure.
That's the whole divine balance.
That's true. Yeah. When you suffer, you realize you're not actually in control of everything. You're not God. That's one of the things, one of the lessons of that.
But that's what the left pushes most. The left pushes the selfish ideology that you are the God of your world. Mm-hmm. And anything inside your world is the most important thing. And anyone that attacks that world is the enemy.
Mary, how old is your oldest?
12.
12 years old. Do you have an idea of what you're going to do when it comes to cell phones?
Oh, yeah. I'm outside the norm. Most of my daughter's friends have cell phones now, and we just won't be doing that. I think whenever we've decided that whenever they start driving, they're going to have the most basic flip phone imaginable, and we'll be teaching them how to get to places, important places, and how to navigate around the cities and stuff that they live in. I think we kind of lost that ability to do that.
You're going to buy your daughter a map?
Yeah, exactly. She's going to get a map and a compass, and hopefully she'll find her way home. But
that's funny.
In all seriousness, I don't think that children need access to everything all the time. And in fact, their brains literally cannot handle it. And our brains can barely handle it. I mean, think about, the first time you signed on Instagram and you got like 100 likes on something, the dopamine in your brain is just bing, 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 bing. But then imagine that happening to someone who is underdeveloped or who is having trouble in school or who doesn't have very many friends. All of a sudden, that validation becomes way more important than what happens in real life.
Yeah, they say the same thing is kind of true of psychedelic drugs, for instance, too. It's like it takes your brain to places that you're not supposed to be in.
Exactly.
And I'm watching it happen definitely on those phones. Hey, thank you very much, Mary Rooke, as always, for your excellent insights and for being a great American. Thank you, Mary. Good to talk to you today. Okay, a lot to get to here. We've got Republican congressmen on the border today. They went and visited the border, Eagle Pass, Texas, to demonstrate just how out of control things are. According to Speaker Johnson, the area had been basically virtually cleared of all of those masses of humanity that you saw last week. Obviously, the Biden administration trying to hide the evidence of their guilt at the moment and not allow the Republicans to be near it. But they were there today. They were witnessing people crossing illegally, despite the Biden administration's efforts to hide that. And then Congressman Matt Gaetz, just 2 hours ago, tweeted a video out. He said, "I'm currently in Eagle Pass, Texas, witnessing the intentional destruction of our southern border by the Biden administration." And he tweets out a video. It says, "The video was sent to me by a Texas official. It shows how illegal aliens are being encouraged to invade our country while the fencing put up by Texas is cut open by Customs and Border protection. So it's not clear at this moment what day that video was shot. Matt Gaetz is making it seem like it was shot very recently, like as recently as today. Not clear, but Governor Greg Abbott has reacted to this. He tweeted the following out. Importantly, if this video was taken today, it means that the Biden administration is in direct violation of a current court order by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals prohibiting the Border Patrol from cutting the razor wire erected by Texas. If true, we will seek contempt of court. Greg Abbott is right. The Biden administration right now is being stopped by the federal courts from cutting open that concertina wire that Texas is placing along the edge of the Rio Grande. And they were appealing this very week, the ruling. They're saying, please let us open the border. Please let us cut the wire open, so we can secure it. What? More details from our disastrous southern border ahead. I've got some audio from those Republicans visiting the border today and a preview of Joe Biden's plans to divide the country this weekend. That's all ahead. Good afternoon to you. 535 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. CNN had some breaking news today.
We have breaking news just into CNN. The House Homeland Security Committee will formally begin impeachment proceedings against DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. CNN's Lauren Fox joins us now from Washington, D.C. And Laura, what details do you have?
Yeah, we are learning more information that in this new year, the House Republicans are planning to forge ahead with an impeachment against Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Yeah, because he deserves it. Has any official deserved it more than Alejandro Mayorkas? I mean, I know Biden's, of course, on the list, but Alejandro may be at the very top. Alejandro. Yeah, he deserves it. Little Lady Gaga for you. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, was on the border alongside a cadre of Republican congressmen today, and he had this to say.
We also toured the CBP processing facility here in Eagle Pass, and it's been an eye-opener. One thing is absolutely clear. America is at a breaking point with record levels of illegal immigration, and today we got a first-hand look at the damage and the chaos the border catastrophe is causing in all of our communities. The situation here and across the country is truly unconscionable. We would describe it as both heartbreaking and infuriating. Our communities are overrun. We have local resources that are being strapped. We have lethal drugs that are pouring into our country at record levels. And it's in less than 3 years that President Biden took office that this has happened. That we have over 7 million illegal encounters at the border, nearly 2 million known gotaways, and that doesn't count the many that are undetected. At 312 suspects on the terrorist watch list that have been apprehended. We have no idea how many terrorists have come into the country and set up terrorism cells across the nation. Last month alone, we saw the most illegal crossings in recorded history.
It's an atrocity. It really is. The New York Times says 60 Republicans were standing there, about 60. Good for them. I'm glad they were out there. This is one of those things. And Kevin McCarthy and a couple of other Republicans did make the visit to the border when he was Speaker of the House. It's not the first time something like this has happened, but keep the focus on that. I want to see a lot of aggression on this issue because that's why you're there. You're supposed to represent this country. And, in order to have a country, we need to have borders. Right now, we don't have one of those. Here's Mike Johnson talking about what Biden has done for the cartels and foreign nationals and everybody except American citizens.
The president can and should act now. This doesn't require legislation. It requires leadership.
Of course.
And despite the White House's claim, he has all the authority he needs right now under existing federal law to stop this madness.
Yeah, you don't need legislation to tell the Border Patrol to stop cutting the razor wire. like, how are we going to get control of this border? Well, I don't know. Don't cut the razor wire. That's a good start. Just let's leave that in place. Of course, it's a sign of what they really want, which is the border to be wide open. This is on purpose. Speaker Johnson points out that Governor Abbott is one of the few who's trying to actually close the border.
Right here in Texas, Governor Abbott has heroically done more to enforce the law than the president has. And how has this administration responded? They have sued the state of Texas to stop their deterrence efforts. They have brought them to court. to strike down their ability to put up buoys in the water and razor wire and the rest. It's absolute insanity.
And it gives the game away. Here's Jim Jordan.
Ask, what's the cause? What is the true magnitude of this problem? And then what's the solution? We all know the cause. The speaker said this. The cause is the policies of the Biden administration. And they frankly...
just ask the illegals. Every time they come across the border, you're like, why are you here? Thanks, Joe Biden. Thank you, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the man. He's here. Biden 2024 and forever. All of them. All of it. It's like, it's just all you, every time you ask a question, like, is there a reason you're here? Biden, right? Or whatever their native language is. They're from all over the world. I'm not picking a particular accent here. I'm just saying everyone keeps saying Biden to the extent that they're asked at all.
Decided on day one, January 20th, 2021, when he took the oath of office, they decided that day, no more building the wall, no more remain in Mexico, and they were going to release people who came to the country. And that became the incentive for so many millions to come to our great country. The magnitude of the problem, you've all heard the numbers, but I just point to two.
Last created a humanitarian crisis.
Record month, 300,000 illegal migrants come into the country. The pace of the Biden administration in his term as president will reach 12 million when they're done.
Biden's a destroyer, isn't he? He just wrecks everything he touches. I was going to say the opposite of the Midas touch, but I guess the moral of the Midas touch story was kind of ruined everything. Then it all turned into gold. Mark Green also had this to say about Director Chris Wray of the FBI, his testimony.
Director Wray admitted before my committee the other day, our committee the other day, that with the border wide open and a war in Israel, Hamas can just walk right in. That's the director of the FBI. He fears for his own agents. It's clear this is intentional. Secretary Mayorkas knows the policies. If the AG knows the policies are the cause...
How long should the impeachment inquiry be for Mayorkas? Like, how many minutes should they... Like 5, right? They should turn the lights on and say, that's it. Then turn the lights back off. It's done. Have the vote. Like, you just start the hearing with, and now we will begin the vote to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. No further evidence necessary. I rest my case. Some reporter asked for a show of hands. Who's going to shut down the government here? Show of hands among you Republicans. Here's Pat Fallon, a regular here on our program.
Sir, can we see a show of hands? Who will vote to shut down the government?
No, we're not going to do show of hands. We're not in a classroom. We're not doing show of hands.
Well,
yeah. Can we deport that guy? We're not doing it. We're not doing a show of hands. Good to see Republicans finally treating the media, members of the media who deserve it the way that they deserve. On that issue, real quick for you, I do have Vivek Ramaswamy. Have you heard this audio yet? Vivek with the Washington Post reporter last night. So great. This Washington Post, I don't even know why they were asking this question, but they were like, do you condemn white supremacy? Yeah, does the Indian guy condemn white supremacy? What are you even talking about? Why are you asking this stupid question? Vivek Ramaswamy didn't abide it, and in fact, dunked her into the earth.
I'm not going to recite some catechism for you. I'm against vicious racial discrimination in this country. So I'm not pledging allegiance to your new religion of modern wokeism, which actually fits the test. I'm not going to bend the knee to your religion. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to bend the knee to mine, and I'm not going to bend the knee to yours. But do I condemn vicious racial discrimination? Yes, I do. Am I going to play your silly game of gotcha? No, I'm not. And frankly, this is why people have lost trust. And I know you're going to go print the headline tomorrow. I already know this. We already know how your game works. Vivek Ramaswamy refuses to condemn white supremacy because you asked a stupid question. The reality is, I condemn vicious racial discrimination in this country, but the kind of vicious and systematic racial discrimination we see today is discrimination on the basis of race in a very different direction. You want to know what the best way is to end discrimination on the basis of race? Stop discriminating on the basis of race. Do that, and we're going to move this country forward. And I don't care whether you're black or white or brown or anything in between. That's how we're going to unite this country. You people have been responsible for dividing this country to a breaking point, creating a projection of national division. I meet people from the south side of Chicago to meetings like this one of every shade of melanin, multiple, from man to woman, doesn't make a difference, who are hungry for reviving unity in this country. And you, with your catechism that you try to get to politicians to whatever fake headline you're going to print on the basis of this conversation tomorrow, that's what's dividing this country to a breaking point. Shame on you. Look people in the eye and tell them what you've actually failed to tell them for the last 5 years. Own the accountability for your own failures as the media. That's how we rebuild trust in this country. And until then, I don't have a lot of patience to play the games.
All right. So in the midst of that sound that you just heard, where Vivek was like, I'm not playing your stupid game. Shame on you. What a dumb religion you have. This is, I did a quick site search for the Washington Post. I was like, okay, let's find out what headline they actually attached to this moment. So site, this is, if you ever want to do this on Google, it's very, very easy. Just site, WashingtonPost.com. I just did that. And then I typed in Vivek, white supremacy, and I narrowed it to just the last 24 hours. Guess what popped up? Nothing. They didn't write a thing. They haven't written a single article. The only thing Vivek got wrong was that they would write a stupid headline. She got so slam dunked, they decided to skip the story. They have nothing up on their website. It's amazing. All right, let me tell you about what Biden is up to this week. Biden is set to give a big speech on Saturday at Valley Forge. He's headed to Pennsylvania. And guess what Saturday is? Have you looked at your calendar yet? You should know this. It's one of the high holy days of the left. It's actually, it's the high holy day of the left. January 6th, 2024. It marks 3 years. Has it really been 3 years already? 3 years since the events of January 6, 2021. The Capitol riot, as CBS News says, but others refer to it as the insurrection at the United States Capitol. So Biden is going to Valley Forge. You think he's going to give a big unifying speech at Valley Forge? He's going to bring the country together. He's going to stand up there and say, now's the time. We should all come together as a country. We should overcome our differences. We should work together. We should figure out how to move forward as a great country. You think that's going to happen? I don't think so. Over on CNN, they have a preview of this. Here's Biden campaign spokesman Quentin Fawkes.
Why Valley Forge for Saturday? Are you expecting a cold winter?
No, we're expecting a very good winter come next November.
Stupid joke.
November. But look, we chose Valley Forge. George Washington, as you just said, unionized colonies there and brought them all together. And then he became president and set the precedent for, a peaceful transition of power, something that Donald Trump and Republicans refused to do just as late as yesterday. We believe that they pose an existential threat to democracy. And over the last 4 years, that threat to democracy has only grown.
The party that's removing their political opponent from the ballot, the party that's attempting to imprison their political opponent, is saying that Republicans are a, quote, existential threat to democracy. It's going to be a big unifying speech this weekend. And, this is par for the course for Biden. Biden has done this from time to time. Remember ahead of the midterms in 2022, Biden gave the blood red speech at Independence Hall. I made the mistake of saying Liberty Hall earlier. Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Here is Joe Biden, bathed in blood red light, flanked by United States Marines. Do you remember this? Marines to either side who were forced to be a part of this extremist dog and pony show. Here's Biden saying, it's actually my opponent who's extreme.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
They represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. And, of course, that speech was so insane that you had people on CNN saying, this seems like a little much, don't you think? I went back and I looked at my notes. This was of September of 2022. And I'm just reading through my notes I keep notes every day on what's happening in the world. Soaked in blood red light, Biden casts Trump voters as nation's greatest threat. This is my note to myself. Protester interrupts. F Joe Biden, someone screamed. He was interrupted by a heckler that night during the speech. Let's see. Tucker Carlson responded to this as truly nuts. It's a complete outrage. Yeah, they're a threat, says the guy with the blood red Nazi background and the Marines standing behind him. It's a complete outrage. This is truly nuts and threatening to the future of the United States. Over on CNN, Breonna Keeler said on the morning program at the time, quote, whatever you think of this speech, the military is supposed to be apolitical. Positioning Marines in uniform behind President Biden for a political speech flies in the face of that. It's wrong when Democrats do it. It's wrong when Republicans do it, she said on the air. CNN's Jeff Zeleny also said that doing this against a backdrop of two Marines standing at attention in the Marine band is a break with White House traditions. So even CNN at the time was like, this is a little crazy. What are we witnessing here? And so Biden wants to do it again. So what did we find out about that speech after it happened? Well, I also have notes from that day. Back to September 5th of 2022. John Meacham is a is a presidential historian, nominally. He's written a bunch of books about presidents. And he helped write that speech. Meacham has turned Joe Biden into his little plaything. He's been writing all of these speeches. Every time you hear Biden talk about the future of our democracy and who's the real threat, this guy, John Meacham, it turns out, keeps writing all these speeches. He's the guy. Politico reported at the time that it was John Meacham. The actual writing of the speech started 3 weeks prior to Biden giving the blood red speech, with Meacham helping the framing of the speech. The White House called that speech, that last one, the continued battle for the soul of the nation. Guess what Meacham's 2018 book is called? The Soul of America, The Battle for Our Better Angels. In fact, his HBO documentary is also called that. This is the guy. It's just like a bunch of product placement for John Meacham using the Biden presidency. What else has he done? Oh, the cover art for that book hangs over Joe Biden's shoulder in the Oval Office. Did you know that? John Meacham picked the artwork for the Oval Office, and he picked the cover of his own book to hang on the wall. Man, this guy has a lot of influence over at that White House. Pretty wild. Meacham has also gone on television and praised Joe Biden's speeches that he wrote without disclosing to the audience that he wrote them. Did you know that? It was back in 2020, in November of 2020. John Meacham went on air on MSNBC and was talking about how great the speech was. He wrote it, and he didn't tell the MSNBC audience. Oh, it's wild. It's totally wild. So what do we get today? Well, it turns out, ahead of this big speech that Biden's supposed to give about democracy, he just so happened to have a lunch with presidential historians today. Well, that's a weird coincidence. Here's Corinne today explaining, not really giving us many details about what happened.
Is there a list of the scholars and the historians that the press office said he had lunch with today in the lead up to the January 6th?
I don't have a list to share at this time. For folks who are not tracking, this afternoon the president met or had lunch with a group of scholars and historians to discuss ongoing threats to our democracy, whether here and also abroad. This is something that he tends to do, especially as we head towards an important day like January 6th. So it's something that it is commonly done. He's done it. He's met with a diverse group of historians before. I don't have a list to provide to you at this time.
I'm not going to tell you the names of the historians he's meeting with. Now, I'm just going to, I'll bet you. It was John Meacham. It's Meacham. Meacham again. The guy, he's like picking artwork in the Oval Office. He writes all of his speeches. He goes on TV. That was a great speech. He doesn't tell the audience that he wrote it. Like, who do you think? Well, I'm pulling on my non-existent beard right now. Who could it be? It was Meacham. Meacham is dining in the White House mess. They're having a great time. Yeah, you know what'll really save democracy is if you say that Republicans and their voters are a real threat to our country, and then you justify removing your political opponent to save democracy. And meanwhile, Biden's sucking up to all these guys because he wants them to write nice books about him. How great the Biden presidency was. It's so awesome. Because really, at this point, the only way he's going to get that kind of writing is if he sucks up to the people who write the books. That's literally the only way. Because reality is not actually going to bear out that this presidency was a slam dunk, right? Where does Biden go on the top 10 list? Does he make it to, how many presidents have we had? 46 now. Yeah. Does he make it in the top 40? Come on. Only if you suck up to the historians. The breaking news really never stops. As we were talking here in the last few minutes, the New York Times has posted an op-ed from Claudine Gay, the up until recently president of Harvard. She's explaining why this is all so unfair and she needed to resign from her post. I just did a quick search. She uses the word I 27 times. She uses me 8 times, my 19 times, for a grand total of 54 references to herself. Narcissism never stops at Harvard. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.